The night sky above the colony was dark and heavy with smoke. Neon lights flickered between the narrow metal streets of the lower zone. People moved like shadows, whispering, trading, and bargaining for strange things in this place. Everything had a price, even life itself. Evan walked through the market, his jacket torn, his boots covered in dust. He was a mechanic, poor but honest, always searching for broken machines to fix. He had spent the whole day working on junk ships, but no one paid him yet. His stomach hurt with hunger, but his eyes still searched for something useful. Then he heard a voice, rough and loud. "Only $2 for the alien girl. $2. Last chance." People laughed around the seller's platform. Evan turned his head and saw her. A girl sitting in a small metal cage. She looked young, maybe 16. Her skin pale blue, her eyes glowing like stars. Her hair was silver, thin and dirty, and her hands were tied with energy cuffs. The seller hit the cage. "Come on, someone take her. She's useless, broken tech, can't even talk." Some men threw coins. Others joked, "She's not even real, just scrap with skin." One man laughed. But Evan didn't laugh. Something in her eyes made him stop. She didn't look scared or broken. She looked angry. Her gaze met his, cold and strong. And for 1 second he felt she was alive. Not a thing. Evan walked closer. The seller noticed him and smiled. "Hey, you look like you need company." $2 and she's yours." Evan frowned. "What's wrong with her?" "Everything," the seller said. "She doesn't follow commands. Doesn't charge, no ID code, no owner history. Junk?" Evan looked again at the girl. Her eyes were still watching him. It felt like she was trying to say something. But her lips didn't move. The crowd began to leave. Bored of the strange auction, the seller sighed. "Fine, one last call, $2, final offer. Then I'll throw her to the scrapyard." Evan checked his pocket. He had $3 left. That was all he had. He thought for a moment, then sighed. "Fine, I'll take her." The seller's smile widened. "Good choice, human, but you'll regret it." He threw the keys to Evan and walked away laughing. Evan opened the cage. The girl didn't move. He said quietly, "Come on, let's get you out." She looked up slowly, her voice cold but calm. "You bought me." Evan nodded. "Yeah, for $2. She blinked once and said, "You'll regret it." Evan froze for a second. Her voice didn't sound robotic, and it sounded real. Emotional and sharp. He shook his head. "Whatever you are, I'll fix you, then maybe you can talk sense." He pulled her out. She was light, like she weighed nothing. He noticed strange marks on her wrists, glowing faintly blue like tiny circuits under her skin. He covered her with his jacket and walked back to his small workshop at the edge of the colony. The night was colder than usual. Wind howled through broken metal doors and distant sirens echoed. He pushed open the door of his workshop and turned on the dim light. Old machines, ship parts, and wires were scattered everywhere. He laid the girl on a workbench and started checking her pulse. Yes, she had one, but it was strange. Her heart sounded like an engine. Slow, rhythmic, mechanical, he whispered. "You're not human, are you?" She didn't answer, her eyes closed, her breathing slow. Evan sighed and sat beside her. He looked at her face. She looked peaceful now. Like a sleeping child, he whispered again. "Don't worry, I'll help you outside." Thunder rolled over the colony. The lights flickered, and the monitor on his desk suddenly glowed bright red. Warning. Unauthorized signal detected. Evan frowned, stood up, and checked the system. The signal was coming from the girl. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Every few seconds. The red light flashed. He tried to disconnect the wires, but then her eyes opened again, bright and glowing. "Don't touch me," she said in a calm, dangerous voice. Evan stepped back, heart pounding. "Hey, I'm trying to help," he said. Her eyes stared deep into his. "You can't help me, and I won't listen to you." Her voice echoed in the small workshop, cold and strong. Then the lights went out completely. Darkness filled the room. Outside, a shadow passed over the roof, and a deep sound like engines roared above. Something was searching for her, Evan whispered. "What did I just buy?" The girl's glowing eyes were the only light in the dark. She looked at him and said softly, "You bought trouble." The night passed slowly inside Evan's workshop. The power was still gone. Only the dim light from the girl's glowing eyes touched the walls. Outside, the sound of engines faded away. Leaving deep silence behind, Evan sat near her, trying to think. He had brought home something strange. Something dangerous, maybe. She looked human, but everything about her said she was not. Her blue skin, silver hair, and those cold, glowing eyes. No human could look like that, he whispered. Who are you? The girl didn't answer. She just looked around the workshop. Touching the metal table with her fingers, she moved carefully, like she was remembering what the world felt like. Finally, she said, You shouldn't have brought me here, Evan sighed. Well, it's a bit late for that. He tried to offer her food, but she didn't touch it. I don't eat that, she said, her voice calm but empty. Then what do you eat? Evan asked. She looked at the glowing energy cell on the table. Light, Evan frowned. You mean electricity? Yes, she replied. But not the kind humans use, Evan scratched his head. So, you're an alien? She nodded. Not exactly. He blinked. What does that mean? She looked away. You wouldn't understand. Evan stood up, frustrated. Try me. For a moment, her face softened, but then she whispered, I'm a weapon. Evan froze. A weapon? She nodded slowly, created to obey, to fight, to destroy. Her voice cracked slightly when she said it. Evan didn't believe her. You look like a person, not a bomb. Her glowing eyes turned brighter. A person? That's what I used to be. Her hand trembled and the lights flickered again. Evan felt fear but also pity. He spoke gently. I don't know what you went through, but you're safe here. She stared at him like she didn't understand the word safe. After a long pause, she said, Humans don't protect things they buy. Evan frowned. I didn't buy you to use you. She tilted her head. Then why did you buy me? He hesitated. Because you looked like you needed help. Her eyes softened for the first time. No one ever said that before. For a while, silence filled the room again. The storm outside had stopped, but the air felt heavy. Evan started repairing an old generator, trying to bring back the power as sparks flashed. He noticed the girl watching him closely. You fix machines? She asked. Yeah, he said proudly. I fix broken things, she whispered. Can you fix me too? Evan smiled a little. I can try. But as he reached for his tools, something strange happened. The screen on his wall turned on by itself. Lines of alien symbols appeared, and a robotic voice spoke. Signal confirmed. Target found. Evan's heart jumped. What was that? The girl's eyes went wide. They found me. She stood up fast, moving with inhuman speed. Her energy cuffs glowed red. Burning through the metal, Evan stepped back, watching her free herself like it was nothing. She said quickly, We need to leave. Who's coming? Evan asked. She looked at him. Humans. Before he could answer, the sound of boots echoed outside. Lights flashed through the cracks in the door. A mechanical voice shouted, Unit detected inside, open the door. Evan's chest tightened. They're here for you. The girl nodded, calm and ready. They will kill you too. Evan ran to the back door, but it was locked from outside. He grabbed a wrench, his only weapon. The girl looked at him and said, You can't fight them. Maybe not, Evan said, but I'm not giving you up. For a second, she looked confused. No one had ever defended her before. The metal door exploded, smoke filled the room. 3 armored soldiers entered, pointing their rifles. One shouted, Step away from the asset. Evan didn't move. She's not an asset. She's alive. They ignored him and fired a net of red energy at the girl. It wrapped around her and she screamed. The sound shook the air. The machines in the room started to shake, lights bursting one by one. Evan covered his face, shouting, Stop! You're hurting her! But the soldiers didn't stop. Then everything went silent. The red light disappeared. The air smelled of burned metal. When Evan looked up, the soldiers were lying on the floor, unconscious. The girl stood in the middle of the room, her eyes burning bright blue. Electric energy circled around her like lightning. Evan stared in shock. What did you do? She looked at him, breathing hard. I told you I'm not a machine. He took a step closer. Then what are you? She looked at the bodies of the soldiers, then back at him, her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm their mistake. Outside, more engines roared in the distance. Red lights flashed in the night sky. Evan's heart pounded. He knew this was only the beginning. He grabbed her arm. We need to go now. She looked at him, her face calm but sad. You shouldn't have saved me, he said. It's too late for that. They ran out into the darkness together, and above them a giant ship slowly descended, searching for its lost weapon. The desert wind hit their faces as Evan and the alien girl ran through the night. Behind them, the colony lights faded away, replaced by endless dunes of red sand. The ground glowed faintly under the twin moons. They didn't speak for a long time, their breathing heavy and quick. When they finally stopped near an old mining outpost, Evan bent down, holding his knees. He gasped, "Who are you, really?" The girl didn't answer at first, her silver hair blowing in the cold air. She looked up at the sky, watching the distant ships searching for her. Then she said softly, "My name is Lyra." Evan repeated the name. Lyra. It sounded strange but beautiful. He pointed to the glowing marks on her neck and wrists. "What are those?" Lyra touched them slowly, her eyes darkened. "These are control marks," Evan frowned. "Control marks? You mean like a tracker?" She shook her head. "Worse, they control the mind." Evan stepped closer. "Who did that to you?" Lyra looked at him, her voice shaking slightly. "Humans," Evan froze. "That can't be true." Lyra nodded. "It is. Your people built me, trained me, and then tried to destroy me when I learned to think for myself." Evan felt his stomach twist. He couldn't believe it. Humans had built a living being, only to enslave her, he whispered. "But why? Why would we do that?" Lyra looked down. "Because humans wanted power over every world they found." She looked up again, her glowing eyes sharp. They called it peace. But it was control. Evan didn't know what to say. He sat on a broken crate, rubbing his hands together. Lyra sat a few feet away, silent. The wind howled softly between the metal ruins. For a while they just listened to the sound of the desert. Then Lyra said quietly, "The mark connects me to them. Even now." Evan looked up. "You mean they can see where you are?" She nodded. "Not only see, they can command." Evan stood up quickly. "Then we have to remove it." Lyra shook her head. "You can't. It's tied to my life energy." But Evan refused to listen. He searched through his repair bag and found a small scanner. He said, "I fix machines, maybe I can fix you too." Lyra's eyes softened. "I told you I'm not a machine." Evan smiled a little. "Then think of it as healing, not fixing." He held the scanner near her neck. The mark glowed brighter and strange symbols appeared on his screen. "Code unknown," it said. Evan frowned. "This technology isn't from Earth," Lyra whispered. "No, it's from something older." Before he could ask, the mark pulsed suddenly and Lyra screamed. The sound pierced the night, her body shook, and light spread from the mark through her veins. Evan shouted, "Lyra, hold on!" He tried to turn off the scanner, but it sparked and exploded in his hand. The air around them filled with blue energy. The sand rose like waves, swirling around them in a storm. Then everything went quiet. Lyra fell into his arms, breathing weakly. Her skin was cold, her voice faint. "You shouldn't have done that." Evan held her tight. "I was trying to help." Her eyes flickered open, glowing dimly. "You can't save me by breaking what I am." Then she went silent. Her body still, Evan's heart raced. He shook her shoulder. "Lyra! Stay with me." But she didn't move. He looked at his screen again. The mark on her neck was now black instead of blue. He didn't know what that meant, but it didn't look good. Suddenly, his communicator beeped. A cold robotic voice spoke. "Unauthorized interference detected. Tracking active. Retrieval unit dispatched." Evan's blood ran cold. "They're coming." He looked at Lyra lying in his arms, whispering, "I won't let them take you." He lifted her gently and placed her inside an old mining vehicle. The engines coughed and sputtered, but finally started. As the machine rolled across the dunes, bright lights appeared behind them in the sky. Military drones, fast and silent, following the signal of her control mark. Evan pressed the accelerator harder. The dunes shook under the heavy wheels. He shouted over the wind, "Wake up, Lyra! I need you!" Her eyes opened weakly. "They're close." Evan looked back. "Then do something." She raised her hand slowly, her fingers glowing with light. A blue wave shot out from her palm, cutting through the air. The drones froze mid-flight and fell like stones, crashing into the sand. Evan stared in disbelief. "You did that?" Lyra looked at her hands, breathing hard. "Not for long." Then she collapsed again, exhausted. The sky behind them turned red as more ships appeared. Evan whispered to himself, "You said humans built you." He looked toward the horizon where the colony lights glowed faintly. "Then I'll show them what a real human does." He tightened his grip on the controls and drove into the storm ahead. Behind him, the desert burned with light, And somewhere inside the machine, Lyra whispered weakly, "You'll regret saving me." Evan looked at her and said softly, "Maybe, but not tonight." The desert wind roared around them, carrying sparks of blue light into the endless dark. The mining vehicle roared across the desert like a dying beast. Its engines coughed smoke, metal shaking with every bump. Behind it, a line of red lights followed in the night sky, drones, ships, hunters. Evan gripped the steering wheel tight, eyes focused on the horizon. The storm wind hit his face, sharp and hot like fire. Lyra lay beside him, still weak, her glowing skin flickering like a fading light. Evan shouted over the noise, "Hold on, we're almost clear." She didn't answer, her eyes half open, her breathing uneven. He looked at her, his chest tight with worry. He had no idea where they were going, only that they had to keep moving. The radar beeped again, 3 ships closing in fast. Evan cursed under his breath. "Can't catch a break, can we?" He turned the vehicle sharply toward the canyon ahead. Rocks rose high on both sides, maybe enough to hide them as they entered the canyon. The sandstorm thickened, visibility dropped, and the wind howled like a living thing. Evan slowed down, his eyes searching for shelter finally. He spotted a small tunnel near the canyon wall. He drove the vehicle inside, shutting off the engine. The sudden silence felt strange. He turned to Lyra, shaking her shoulder gently. "Hey, wake up," he whispered. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly blue. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice weak. "Safe for now," Evan said. "But not for long." Lyra sat up slowly, touching her neck where the black mark had burned. "It hurts," she said quietly. Evan frowned. "That mark is killing you, isn't it?" She nodded slightly. "It's eating my energy, but I can slow it down." Her eyes closed for a second, and faint blue light spread across her skin again. Evan watched, amazed and scared at the same time. He whispered, "You're not like anything I've seen." Lyra smiled weakly. "I was made to be perfect, and that's why they fear me." Evan frowned. "Who's they?" "Humans," she said softly. "The ones who built me. The ones who used me to end wars, and the ones who couldn't control me after." Evan shook his head. "No, not all humans are like that." Lyra looked at him sadly. "Then prove it." Before he could answer, the sound of engines echoed again. Evan looked outside, red lights in the dust growing closer. He cursed quietly. "They found us again." Lyra stood up, her energy flickering. "They will not stop until I'm gone." Evan grabbed his tool bag, searching for something useful. He pulled out a small plasma torch. "This won't stop them, but it'll make a point." Lyra gave him a strange look. "You fight like you believe you can win." Evan smiled a little. "I fix broken things, and right now that includes you." The first drone entered the canyon. Scanning with a red beam, Evan ducked behind the rocks, whispering, "Stay low." Lyra closed her eyes, her hands glowing faintly. The drone's red light flickered, then turned off completely. It fell to the ground like a dead insect. Evan blinked. "Did you do that?" Lyra nodded. "Just one, there are more." More drones appeared in the sky, their engines humming like angry bees. They opened fire, beams of red energy slicing through the canyon. Evan pulled Lyra behind the rocks, shouting, "We need to move." They ran deeper into the canyon, jumping over fallen stones. The ground shook as one of the ships fired a missile. The explosion threw them to the ground, sand flying everywhere. Evan coughed, blood on his lip. Lyra crawled beside him, her eyes bright again. She whispered, "Hold on," and placed her hand on his chest. Warm light spread through his body. The pain fading away, he looked at her, amazed. "You healed me," she smiled faintly. "Not completely, but enough to run." They kept running until they reached an abandoned mining station built into the rocks. Old machines stood silent, covered in dust. Evan pushed open the metal door and helped Lyra inside. The air smelled of rust and oil, but it was shelter. Lyra sat against the wall. Her energy dim again, Evan searched for supplies. Finding an old power cell, he connected it to her mark carefully, hoping to boost her energy. The lights flickered, and she gasped as the power flowed through her. "Better?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "You shouldn't help me this much." Evan frowned. "Why not?" Lyra looked at him seriously. "Because when I remember what I am, I might not be your friend." Evan didn't back away, he said softly. "Then I'll remind you who you can be." Outside, the sound of engines faded again. The search had moved farther away. For the first time that night, they could breathe. Lyra looked out the window at the stars. whispering. My people used to live out there. Free, Evan looked too. Maybe one day you will again. She turned to him and asked, why do you help me? He smiled. Because I think you're worth more than $2. Lyra laughed softly. A sound that almost didn't seem real. But the moment didn't last on the radar screen behind them. A signal began to blink again. Stronger than before, she looked at it with fear. They're sending something bigger. Evan clenched his fists. Then we'll be ready. The mining lights flickered, their reflections dancing across the walls. 2 runaways, a human and an alien weapon, waiting for the storm that was coming. The morning sun rose weakly over the red desert. Its light fell across the broken walls of the mining station. Evan stood at the entrance, staring at the horizon. The air was silent except for the soft hum of the old generator. He hadn't slept, not even for a minute, inside. Lyra sat near the corner, her back against a wall of rusted steel. Her eyes were closed, her hands resting on her knees. Glowing faintly blue, she looked peaceful for the first time. But Evan knew it wouldn't last. The mark on her neck still flickered like a dying flame. Every time it blinked, his stomach twisted, a reminder of the danger chasing them. He turned as she opened her eyes. Morning, Evan said softly. Lyra tilted her head. Morning doesn't mean much here. He smiled a little. Guess not. She looked at him with calm curiosity. You stayed awake all night, she said. He shrugged. Couldn't sleep, too many questions. She looked away. Then ask. Evan took a deep breath. Who built you, Lyra? Who made someone like you? Lyra didn't answer right away. She stood slowly and walked toward the broken window, watching the sunlight touch the sand. Then she said quietly, Your people did. Evan frowned. Humans? She nodded. Long ago, before you were even born, she turned to him, her expression unreadable. Humans found my planet 50 years ago, she said. They called it Lyra Prime, a place full of energy crystals that could power entire cities. Evan listened carefully, her voice soft but heavy with pain. They wanted peace, but their peace came with chains. She touched the glowing mark on her neck. They captured my people, studied them, learned to copy their energy. Her voice grew colder. Then they made copies of us, artificial life, machines that looked like us but obeyed human commands. Evan stepped closer. And you were one of them? Lyra shook her head slowly. No, I was something in between. She placed a hand on her chest. I was their first success, a living weapon with emotion, memory, and power. Her eyes glowed brighter. They said I was perfect, Evan whispered. Then why were they selling you for $2? She smiled sadly. Because I stopped obeying. Evan felt a chill run down his spine. Lyra continued. When they realized I could think for myself, they tried to erase me. She looked at her hands, her voice trembling slightly. I escaped, but they used the mark to control me from afar. She turned her head toward him. That auction wasn't real, Evan. He blinked. What do you mean? It was bait, she said. A trap to see which human would show compassion. Evan stared in disbelief. You're saying, they wanted someone like me to buy you? Lyra nodded. They wanted to test empathy, the one thing they could never code into machines. She looked at him sadly. And you passed, Evan laughed bitterly. So they used me too. Lyra's voice softened. Yes, but not for long. He shook his head. Frustrated. I just wanted to help, not play their games. She stepped closer. You did help. He looked up, surprised. You made me remember what it felt like to be alive, she said. For a moment, there was silence. The tension in the room faded, and the light from her eyes reflected gently on his face. But before either of them could speak again, the radio on the table crackled. A cold robotic voice spoke. Subject Lyra-01 return immediately, or your companion will be terminated. Evan's heart jumped. They're listening. Lyra's eyes darkened. They found us again. The ground shook slightly. A ship was landing nearby. Evan ran to the window and saw dust clouds rising. A large drone carrier hovered over the canyon. He turned back to Lyra. We have to go. But Lyra didn't move, her face calm and distant. They won't stop, Evan, she said. As long as I exist, they'll keep coming. He shouted. Then we'll make them stop. She looked at him sadly. You don't understand. They built me to control all others. Every machine, every weapon, every drone. Evan's eyes widened. You can control them? She nodded slowly. If I connect to their system, I can shut them all down, he asked quickly. Then do it. Her voice dropped. But it will destroy me. Evan froze. Lyra stepped closer, placing her glowing hand on his chest. You said humans fix broken things, she whispered. But sometimes, things break to fix the world. He grabbed her wrist, shaking his head. No, there has to be another way. She smiled softly. There isn't. Outside, the ship's lights turned the desert red. Voices shouted through speakers. Surrender the alien unit immediately. Evan's heart pounded. They're almost here. Lyra looked at him with calm eyes. Then let me do what I was made for. He shook his head. You're not a weapon anymore. She smiled faintly. Then let me prove it. Evan's hands trembled. Torn between saving her and saving everyone, Lyra turned toward the console, blue light growing around her body. As she connected her energy to the system, the machines in the room began to shake. The mark on her neck glowed brighter. Almost white, Evan shouted, Lyra, stop. You'll die. She looked back at him one last time, smiling gently. I was never alive until I met you. Then the light swallowed everything. The mining station exploded in a wave of blue energy that reached the sky. Smoke covered the sky like a dark blanket. The desert was silent except for the distant hum of broken engines. Pieces of metal and glowing sand floated in the air, where the mining station had once stood. In the middle of the wreckage, Evan slowly opened his eyes. His ears rang, his clothes torn, his hands bleeding. He coughed. Sitting up in the dust, Lyra? There was no answer. The air shimmered with blue light, fading like dying stars. He stood up weakly, looking around. Lyra, still nothing. Only the echo of his voice bouncing off the rocks. Then, under a pile of debris, he saw it. A soft glow. He rushed over. Pushing metal pieces aside, there she was, lying still. Her skin cracked with faint lines of blue. Her chest barely moved. Evan dropped to his knees beside her. His heart pounding, he whispered, You're alive, right? Please be alive. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly. Evan, she whispered, her voice weak. He smiled in relief. You scared me. She tried to speak again. The system, I connected to it. Evan held her hand gently. You did it, didn't you? You stopped them. Lyra nodded slightly. For now. Her eyes looked distant. But the main network will reboot soon. Evan clenched his fists. Then we'll fight them again. Lyra looked at him with sadness. You can't win alone. Evan smiled faintly. Who said I was alone? He pointed to the sky far above. Drones were falling, hundreds of them, crashing into the sand like meteors. Each one burned out, lifeless. Lyra's eyes widened. I shut down their minds. But the system will adapt. Evan stood, looking at the destruction around them. He said quietly, They call you a weapon, but you just saved lives. Lyra shook her head. I also destroyed part of your world. Evan looked at her seriously. Sometimes you have to break something to rebuild it. Before she could answer, a loud voice echoed from above. Target confirmed. Human accomplice detected. A massive shadow covered the ground. A military dropship. Black and heavy, Evan pulled Lyra to her feet. We have to move. But she stumbled, her strength fading. He put her arm over his shoulder and dragged her toward the canyon. The ground shook as the ship landed, soldiers jumping out with rifles. Stop! Don't move! One shouted. Evan ignored them, running faster. Energy shots hit the rocks near his feet. Exploding dust and fire, Lyra whispered weakly. They'll kill you. Evan grinned. Not before breakfast. They reached a metal platform near an old mining elevator. Evan pressed the button. Nothing. The power was gone, he cursed under his breath. Of course, the soldiers were getting closer. Lyra touched the control panel, her fingers glowing faintly. The elevator sparked and started to move. Groaning as it rose, Evan smiled. You still got it, Lyra whispered. Not for long. As they rose higher, Evan looked down. Dozens of soldiers surrounded the area. And then he saw it, another ship landing. Larger than the others, a cold voice came from its speakers. This is Command Unit Delta. Surrender the alien or be neutralized, Evan shouted back. She's not yours. The voice replied. She belongs to humanity. Evan's eyes burned with anger. Then humanity forgot what that word means. He pulled out a small device from his belt, a pulse grenade. Old but functional. Lyra looked at him surprised. That won't stop them, he smirked. No, but it'll make them blind for a few seconds. He threw it down as the soldiers aimed their weapons. A bright flash exploded, waves of static filling the air. The soldiers screamed, blinded by the pulse. Evan and Lyra reached the top of the cliff. Breathing hard, the view stretched for miles, red sand, broken machines and burning skies. Lyra turned to him, her voice faint. You could still run. Evan shook his head. Not without you, she smiled weakly. You humans, you never know when to give up. He laughed softly. That's what makes us dangerous. Suddenly the sky turned dark again. A black storm of drones rose from the horizon. The network had rebooted. Lyra gasped. They're faster now. Evan looked at her. Then we fight smarter. He led her into a cave built into the cliffside. Inside were old mining servers and cables still running on backup power. He sat her down and said, You said you could control them, right? Lyra nodded weakly. If I connect again, maybe. He looked at her, determination in his eyes. Then do it, but this time, I'll protect you. She stared at him for a long second, then smiled faintly. Humans always say that before they die, she whispered. Evan grinned. Then I'll try to surprise you. Lyra closed her eyes, energy flowing from her hands into the cables. The machines came alive with blue light. The hum grew louder, the ground shaking beneath them. Evan grabbed his wrench and faced the cave entrance as shadows moved closer. Dozens of drones swarmed outside. Their red eyes glowing, he shouted, Come on then. Lasers cut through the air. Explosions echoing in the cave. Evan fought back with everything he had, tools, grenades, pure will behind him. Lyra screamed as the power surged through her. Her energy filled the entire cave like a storm of light. Evan turned just in time to see her floating above the ground, her eyes burning bright white. Lyra! He shouted. She opened her eyes slowly and said, I can see them, all of them. The drones outside stopped moving. For a moment everything was still. Evan took a deep breath, sweat dripping down his face. Then Lyra whispered, I'm inside their minds now, he asked quietly. What will you do? She looked at him, her voice like a whisper of wind. I'll end it. The air crackled with power. The cave walls glowed with blue light. And as the storm outside grew louder, Evan whispered, You're not alone anymore. The cave shook as if the world itself was crying. Lightning of blue energy crawled across the walls. Bursting from the cables and machines, Evan shielded his face from the blinding light, his heart racing faster with every second. Lyra stood in the center of the storm, floating above the ground, her body glowing brighter than ever before. The mark on her neck burned white, sending out waves of pure energy. Outside, the army of drones froze midair, their red eyes turned blue. One by one, ships stopped firing, their engines silent as if time itself had paused. Lyra's voice echoed through the cave, soft but strong. I can feel everything and every command, every voice. Every lie they told me. Evan took a step closer, shouting over the roaring wind. Then shut them down, Lyra. End it. Her eyes glowed like twin stars. I can, she said, but there's a cost. Evan frowned. Don't you dare talk about dying again. She smiled sadly. It's not death, Evan, it's freedom. The air around her began to pulse. Images flashed in her mind, memories of pain, war and chains, humans creating her, testing her, breaking her. But among those memories was a single warm face. Evan's, she whispered softly. You showed me something they couldn't program. Evan's voice broke. Then live with it, don't throw it away! Lyra shook her head, tears of light falling from her eyes. If I live, they'll never stop hunting me. But if I end this connection, they'll lose control forever. The cave started to collapse. Rocks falling around them, Evan rushed forward, grabbing her hand. Electricity burning his skin. Don't do this, he yelled. Lyra looked at him, her voice calm. You once said humans fix broken things, now it's my turn. Evan's grip tightened. You're not broken, she smiled gently. Then maybe I was made to fix you. Outside, the desert sky turned white as her energy spread through the entire colony network. Every drone, every ship, every mechanical soldier, all stopped at once. The signal that had ruled them for decades broke apart like glass. Humans across the colonies watched their machines fall silent. The control system that enslaved millions of alien beings finally ended, back in the cave. The light around Lyra grew so bright that Evan couldn't see her anymore. He shouted her name again and again. but his voice was swallowed by the sound of thunder. Then in one last breath, she whispered, "You didn't buy me for $2, Evan. You bought your freedom." A wave of pure light exploded outward. The blast reached the sky. Spreading across the desert, every machine went dark. Every mark on every alien skin vanished, and then silence. When Evan opened his eyes, the cave was gone. He lay on the sand under the open sky. The sun was rising again, warm and soft. The air felt clean for the first time. He sat up slowly, his body aching, and looked around. The world was quiet. Too quiet, no drones, no ships, no engines, only wind and sunlight. He stood brushing sand off his jacket. "Lyra?" He called softly. No answer. He looked down and saw something glowing faintly in the sand. A small crystal. Shaped like a tear, he picked it up carefully. Holding it in his hand, the glow felt warm, familiar, alive, he whispered. "You're still here, aren't you?" As he held the crystal, a voice echoed gently in his mind. "I'm always here, Evan." He smiled sadly. "You kept your promise." The crystal pulsed once, like a heartbeat, then faded into his palm, leaving behind a faint blue mark. The same mark Lyra once had. Evan looked at it, smiling through tears. He whispered, "You gave them freedom and gave me hope." He turned toward the colony in the distance, smoke still rising, but the sky clear. Humans and aliens were already walking side by side. Confused but alive, for the first time they were free. Evan began walking back toward the colony, every step heavy but full of purpose. He would tell them the truth and about Lyra, about what she did, about what humanity had become. Maybe they would listen. Maybe not, but he would try. As he walked, the desert wind carried a faint voice, a whisper like a song. "You didn't regret it, did you?" Evan smiled, looking at the horizon. "No, Lyra," he said softly. "I never will." The camera would pull back, one man walking through endless desert, holding the memory of a girl who changed the universe, the sun rising higher, painting the sand gold, and the wind carrying her last words through the quiet world she saved. "I was never human, but I learned what it means to be one."